Imagine a car so small that you don't park it so much as you just tuck it under your arm like a baguette and carry it into the grocery store. We're talking about a vehicle that makes a smart car look like a monster truck and a folding lawn chair like a feat of structural engineering. Today, we're paying homage to the absolute unit of not quite a unit, the American Bantam Roadster. This car was tiny, not compact, but if I sneeze too hard, we're changing lanes tiny. It looked like something you'd find at the bottom of a cereal box, and yet this cheerful little mechanical peanut actually helped save the world. It's the automotive equivalent of finding out your neighborhood squirrel was a decorated war hero with a secret identity. Before we dive into this pocket-sized legend, a massive shout-out to our channel members and sponsors. You absolute legends are the only thing standing between our producer Timmy and his plan to sell my internal organs on Craigslist for a vintage carburetor and a half-eaten sandwich. Your support funds these deep dives into automotive weirdness and keeps the bail money fund topped off for when Bob inevitably tries to register a jet-powered recliner as a moped. If you want to keep the lights on and the engines idling, hit that join button. So let's travel back to the 1930s. The Great Depression was in swing state, people were broke, and the American dream had been downsized to a ham sandwich. In 1930, a company called American Austin set up in Butler, Pennsylvania, thinking they could sell Americans the British Austin 7, a small, sensible car for sensible times. The problem? Americans in the 30s didn't want sensible. They wanted chrome, they wanted V8s, and they wanted enough hood space to land a small plane on, even if they were living in a tent. American Austin went belly up by 1935, leaving behind a factory full of tiny parts and shattered dreams. Enter Roy Evans, a man who clearly viewed bankruptcy as a mere suggestion. He bought the remains for pennies and rebranded it as American Bantam. He had no money, but he did have a lot of audacity. He hired Count Alexis de Sakhnovsky, a man with a name that sounds like a premium vodka brand and a resume full of Art Deco masterpieces. Evans reportedly paid him about $300 to redesign the car. For context, $300 usually gets you a decent set of tires today, but back then, it bought visual magic. Sakhnovsky took this motorized roller skate and gave it flowing fenders and an eager little face that looked like it was permanently asking for a treat. To fix the "it's slow" problem, they brought in Harry Miller, a racing legend who usually built engines for the Indy 500. This was like hiring a Michelin star chef to upgrade a cup of noodles. The result was the 1937 Model 60 Roadster. It sat on a 75-inch wheelbase, which is roughly the length of a standard yoga mat, and weighed about 1,100 pounds. To put that in perspective, a modern Ford F-150 weighs 5 Bantams. If you hit a pothole in this thing, you didn't just feel it, you became part of the local geological record. Under the hood sat a 747cc four-cylinder engine pumping out a blistering 20 horsepower. That's not a typo, 20. My lawnmower has more horses and it doesn't even have a cup holder. It had a 3-speed manual transmission with no synchro mesh, which meant shifting gears sounded like a bag of spoons in a blender unless you were a literal wizard. The brakes were mechanical drums, which meant stopping was more of a negotiation than a command. Top speed was about 50 miles per hour, but doing 50 in a Bantam felt like re-entering the Earth's atmosphere in a wicker basket. On the plus side, it got 40 miles per gallon in 1937, which at the time was considered dark magic. Celebrities loved them because they were adorable accessories. Ernest Hemingway had one, Buster Keaton was a fan, which makes sense because he treated physics as a polite suggestion, and even Al Jolson took a shine to them. But despite the Hollywood glamour, the general public still wasn't biting. Selling a car this small to Americans was like trying to sell a salad at a state fair. People acknowledged it existed, but they'd rather have the deep-fried butter. Production never even cleared 7,000 units. But then comes the plot twist that belongs in a movie. In 1940, the U.S. Army put out an SOS for a lightweight reconnaissance vehicle. Bantam, being the kings of small and scrappy, slapped together a prototype in record time. The Army loved it. It was the birth of the Jeep. But because Bantam was a tiny company without the factory space to build them by the millions, the government essentially took their blueprints, handed them to Willys and Ford, and said, "Thanks for the homework, kid. We'll take it from here." Bantam got the consolation prize of building trailers, while the Jeep went on to become a global icon. It's the ultimate "I did all the work on the group project and everyone else got an A" story. Today, these little survivors are worth a fortune. A clean Bantam Roadster can fetch $40,000, and some have hit the $90,000 mark at auction. That's a lot of money for a car that you can accidentally park in your own mailbox. The Bantam Roadster didn't conquer the sales charts, but it proved that you don't need a massive engine to leave a massive footprint. It was stylish, brave, and just a little bit ridiculous, which is exactly how we like our cars around here. If you enjoyed this trip down a very narrow memory lane, hit that subscribe button like you're double clutching for your life. Join the channel, support the madness, and please, whatever you do, don't let Timmy near the heavy machinery. We'll see you in the next one where the cars get weirder and Bob finally finishes his motorized pogo stick. Drive safe.